Hi everyone, Angela here. This towel is a great scrap busting project. You just need to cut two 6-inch squares. Fold both pieces in half diagonally, matching the edges. Then clip or pin if you need to. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, click the link for Echidna Sewing and Juki Junkies for North America. Using a 1/4-inch seam allowance, start at the fold, back tack, stitch half of this side, and back tack again. At the corner, fold down both layers 1/4 inch. Again, start with a back tack, stitch the entire seam, back tack to finish, and then repeat with the other piece. Trim all 4 diagonal corners on an angle, making sure not to cut the stitching. Separate the opening and turn each piece right side out. Pull at each side at the corner to give you a nice straight edge, and then use a knitting needle or a point turner to carefully poke out the corners. Adjust the opening and the seams on both sides so that they're right in the center, and press the pieces flat. These pieces will be sewn to one of the shorter sides of the towel. If there's a hanging loop on the back, just carefully cut it away. Using 3/4 inch wide hook and loop tape or Velcro, cut a square of each side. On the back side of the towel, place one of the squares about 1/8 inch in from each side and clip in place if you need to. Stitch it on close to the edges, back tacking at the start and finish, and pivoting at the corners. Once done, trim all your threads. On the right side of the towel, place one of the corner pieces on top, line up the sides, clip the edges in place, and pin along the diagonal edge. Then repeat on the other side. Starting at the corner on the side, back tack, stitch a 1/16 inch from the edge, pivot at the corners, and back tack to finish. Then repeat with the other corner piece. The corner without the Velcro underneath, place the other square of Velcro on top of the fabric and stitch in place. Now you're sewing over several layers in this corner, so go nice and slow, making sure you don't have any skip stitches. Place the end with the fabric corners over your handle, gather up the towel in the center, and bring the corners together in the front. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to check out some of my other towel designs up next. Hi everyone, Angela here. Print out the pattern at 100% letter size and check with the 1-inch square. Carefully cut out each pattern piece and then join B and C together with tape. Use any fabric you like to cut 1 of this loop piece and 2 of pattern piece A for the top. I'm using all the same fabric, but you can definitely use contrasting fabrics. To give it a nice puffy look, I'm using fusible batting with the glue dots on one side. Cut 2 of piece A. With the glue side up, place the wrong sides of the fabric on top and press together. Use 1/4 inch wide elastic, cut the length, and then attach safety pins on each end. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. Make sure to use the code NOTCHESJUKI for the special offer. Fold the length of the loop piece in half with right sides together. Using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, starting from the fold, stitch across, pivot, and then stitch the rest of the seam. Use a tube turner to turn it right side out. It's basically a skinny tube with a longer, skinnier stick. Feed the fabric onto the tube and then use the blunt end of the stick to push the closed end and the fabric through the tube. Use the pointy end to push out the corners and then cut away that closed end. Thread in the elastic until there's just a little bit showing at one end. Stitch down close to the edge of the fabric to hold the elastic in place, repeat on the other end, and then remove the safety pins. Don't stretch it out and leave the ends flat. Take one of the top pieces, fold it in half, and cut a tiny notch in the center. Form a loop with the elastic piece, placing the edges with the seams together at the notch. Make sure the loop's not twisted, and then stitch about 1/4 inch from the edge to hold in place. With right sides together, place the other piece on top, matching the edges. Stitch together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, back tacking at the start and finish. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on all notifications, and leave a comment below. Press the center seam open flat and then turn up all the edges 1/2 inch and press all around. Use any size tea towel for this project and remove the hanging loop if there is one. Fold the towel in half with wrong sides together, then fold in half again in the other direction. Just crease or mark the center and then open with right side up. Place the center of the top on the center of the towel. Turn in all the edges and pin it in place. Stitch all around 1/8 inch from the edge, back tacking at the start and finish, and also making sure to poke in the excess fabric when pivoting at the corners. To hang on a bar, place the loop over it and pull the towel through. To remove, stretch out the elastic and pull down. You can simply hang it on a hook or doorknob, but if you have a handle top like this, wrap it around the front, pull it through, and then loop it around the top. To hang from the bottom of the handle, put the loop behind it and pull the towel through. Make sure to check out some of my other original tea towel designs. Thanks again for watching. Take care and happy sewing. Just like the one before, they're an easy beginner project with no buttons or buttonholes, no snaps or Velcro, and no ribbons and straps to keep tying. Links for the tools I use and my PDF patterns can be found in the description below. To make the pattern for the first design, cut a piece of paper 10 inches by 10 inches. Fold in half and make a crease, then bring your top and bottom edges to that center and fold again. This will be the front of the strap. Open it up and on your pattern, this is the section that's the front. Mark out that section and then draw an arrow along the edge pointing downwards. This will help guide you when cutting directional fabric. Then on each side, draw a line 2 inches in from the edge. This will be the very front of the strap if you plan on doing embroidery or you want a specific part of a print. By cutting this section out, you can easily see where to cut your fabric. You can also transfer your pattern onto translucent template plastic to easily position and cut out. Flip your fabric over to the wrong side, fold and crease like we did with the pattern, giving it a press with your iron and also making sure the folded edges line up. Next, do a 1/4 inch top stitch all around without any back tacking. For design 2, cut a fabric piece out 5 inches by 20 inches. You'll also need 10 inches of 1.5 inch wide elastic. You can also use cotton tape or fabric cut to this size. Fold your fabric in half, matching the long edges with right sides together, then use a 1/2 inch seam allowance to stitch, back tacking at the start and finish. Position the fabric so the seam is in the middle, then press open with your iron without pressing the sides. Next, we need to turn this right side out. You can just do this with your fingers or with a safety pin, but here's a little tip if you haven't seen my other videos. You can use a paper towel holder with rounded ends to turn tubes. Just flip the fabric over the end about 1 inch and pull down. Again, with the seam in the middle, just give it a press with your hand. Next, use a bodkin or safety pin to thread the elastic through the tube. Center the elastic and match your edges, and then edge stitch in place. Pull the rest of the elastic through, remove the bodkin, and stitch in place. Stretch to even out the gathers, and then push the gathers on each end so that about 2 inches of fabric is flat on each side. For design 3, cut 2 pieces of fabric, one 5 inches by 12 inches and the other 5 inches by 14 inches. For both pieces of fabric, fold in half, and then on one end we need a 45-degree angle. You can easily do that by lifting the corner and matching the side edges to the fold, and then just creasing that 45-degree angle. You can also use a quilting ruler and cut. Use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, start with the back tack, stitch towards the corner, pivot, and then continue stitching all the way to the end and back tack to finish. Then trim your corners on an angle, making sure you're not cutting too close to the stitching. Turn right side out. This time I'm going to use the flat end of my knitting needle to help push it through, and then I'll use the pointy end to push out the corners. Then repeat for the other strap. Next, adjust the seam so that it's right on the edge and give it a press. Use any size tea towel and fold it in half lengthwise with wrong sides together. Because I don't pre-wash the towels, I'm going to leave the care label on, but I will remove this little hanging strap. I don't pre-wash the towels because I mainly give these away as gifts and I like the towel to look brand new. But go ahead and wash it if you're worried about shrinkage, just give it a press before making these. Fold your towel in half again, and then just crease it right in the center. Open it up, and then mark that center with chalk or a vanishing ink pen. From the center, measure across 4 inches and then up 3.5 inches, and make a mark. Then repeat on the other side, across 4 inches and up 3.5, and make a mark. Then draw a line joining those 2 marks. If you need to, pin through those marks. Next, stitch right on that line, back tacking at the start and finish. With the folded edge facing you, lift the top layer and then fold it right along that stitch line and give it a press. Now grab the towel from the middle and then flip it over so that the outside edges are at the top. Match them all up and then flatten out that center seam and give it another press. Bring the top layer down, and next we're going to make the pleats. Do this by opening up the center section and arrange it so that the crease is right in the middle. Check that the folds underneath are even and touching, and then just pull at the edges of the towel to make sure everything's laying nice and flat, and give it a press. Mark a line 1 1/4 inches from each fold. Flip the towel over to the wrong side and then fold along those lines. You should be able to just see the lines. Depending on the width of your towel, the edges may or may not overlap. It really doesn't matter. Press along those folds. Lift up the left side of the towel and fold it in half, and then just neaten up the center on the inside. It should measure 6 inches across from edge to edge, and the center section should measure 3.5 inches. From this fold, measure in 2 inches and draw a line across. Then if you need to, make a mark so that you know this will be the back of the towel. Now slip your hand in between and just pin through this half of the towel to keep all the folds in place. Turn it over to the other side, and now this time from the fold, measure in 3 inches and draw a line. This is the front of the towel. Again, place your hand underneath and pin all these folds in place. So if we open it up, the inside should look something like this. If you didn't catch one of the edges, you can go back and add another pin. You'll notice on the right side between the pins that the outer edges sit nice and flat, but there's some extra fabric sticking up in the center part. This is so that when the towel hangs over the bar, it'll sit nice and flat. Next, we need to stitch right on those lines, back tacking at the start and finish. If you have pins that are perfectly perpendicular or at right angles to your line, it's fine to stitch right over them. Remove all the pins and then turn the towel around so that the back where the mark is facing you. This is how you prepare the towel for all of the styles. I've prepared a different color for each one. Again, with the towel open and the back mark facing you, that line of stitching is where we position the top of the band. If you need to, mark ½ inch in from the edge of the band. This is how much we'll be inserting underneath that folded pleat. Make sure the front of the band is facing up with the seam at the bottom. Make sure it's in nice and straight and that the top of the band is pushed right against the stitching. Next, we'll edge stitch just beside the fold of the pleat, back tacking at the start and finish. Take the other end of the band, fold it over and tuck in the other end on the other side of the pleat. Roll the rest of the band out of your way and edge stitch. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on all notifications, and also leave a comment below. So that's a nice easy way to attach the band. Fold the top of the towel and turn it over to the front, and just tuck that top part into the band and adjust everything so it's nice and flat. To make the towel with the gathered strap, just make sure the front of the strap is facing you and the seam is on the back before inserting it into the pleat. Then stitch all together exactly the same way. For the third bow design, again with the back facing you, take the shorter strap with the point at the top and insert it into the pleat. Then take the longer strap with the point at the bottom and insert in the other side. Then just edge stitch both straps in place. To tie it, fold in half and turn over to the front. Cross over the short strap and then the longer strap on top. Hold on to both straps in the center and tuck the longer strap underneath and gently pull. Form a loop with that center strap and, keeping it flat, thread the end through the center. Then pull the knot tight and keep adjusting this bow until it sits nicely across the towel. You can always hand sew a couple of stitches on the back to keep the knot in place. To hang the tea towel, simply place the back of it over the handle and then thread the front of the towel through the loop. Adjust it so that the band covers the stitch line going across. To remove, just pull down on the band. Let me know down in the comments if you like these new designs. Make sure to check out some of my other tutorials. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, take care and happy sewing. Hi everyone, Angela here. Start by cutting out and joining the pattern pieces for the top tie and the optional solid band for the bottom. This is the pattern piece for the bottom band if you want to join different fabrics together. Trace this out of template plastic if you want to fussy cut your fabric. For this project, I'm using 100% quilting cotton. Fold your fabric, preferably along the lengthwise grain, and place the pattern along the fold. Make sure not to use any of the selvage edges and cut out. If it isn't already, fold the fabric with right sides together and then mark out the opening on the center of the edges. If you need to, pin or clip all around. To cut smaller fabric pieces, I like to use my 28mm rotary blade. Cut out the pieces for the bottom band and arrange them in the order that you want, and then if you need to, pin or clip the seams with right sides together. I'm using a Brother NV50S sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are in the description below. Make sure to use coupon code NOTCHES NV50S for the special offer. Stitch the seams using a 1/4 inch or 6mm seam allowance. No need to back tack, just continue stitching about 1 inch of thread between each seam. Once done, trim your threads, leaving about 1/2 inch at each end. For the top tie, start your stitching from the fold using a 1/4 inch seam allowance again. Begin by back tacking and stitch until you're 1/4 inch or 6mm from the edge. With the needle down, lift the presser foot and pivot. Continue stitching until you get to the first mark of the opening and back tack. Raise the needle and foot, skip over to the other mark, back tack, continue stitching, pivoting at the corner, and then back tacking again when you get to the other fold. Trim your threads and then trim all the corners on an angle, making sure not to cut any of the stitching. Turn it right side out and then use a knitting needle or point turner to poke out all the corners. Neatly adjust the opening, center all the seams, and then press all around. Starting at this opening, edge stitch all around, back tacking at the start and finish. Give it another quick press, fold it in half with the points lined up, and then press in a center crease. Next, press open all the seams on the bottom band. I'm adding this rickrack to the top and bottom edges. It measures 5/8 of an inch or 16mm wide, but you can use 1/2 inch or narrower. Place the rickrack on top of the fabric with a little bit extra at the end and line up the edges on the side. We need to stitch right down the center of the rickrack, which can be a little bit tricky, so just take your time. I'll use the side of the foot as a guide and position the needle in the center. On this machine, it's number 4. Stitch right down the middle. When you get to the other end, cut the rickrack a little bit longer than the fabric, and then repeat on the other side. Lift up the rickrack and fold the seam to the back, then press the fabric edges flat on both sides. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on all notifications, and also leave a comment below. Use any size tea towel. This one is 20 inches or 50 centimeters wide. On the right side of the towel, use a vanishing ink pen or some chalk and mark a line 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimeters up from the bottom edge. Turn the towel over and fold in half lengthwise with the wrong sides together and make a crease in the center. Open it up again to the wrong side and then mark a line along that crease. On the front of the towel, find the center of that bottom line by folding the towel in half and mark it. Next, center the bottom band onto that line and pin in place. Put your pins in vertically along both edges in the center of each piece. Fold in the end of the band so it's even with the side of the towel and pin it in place. You may need to trim some off the end of your band if your towel is narrower. On the back, fold the end of the rickrack on a 45-degree angle and clip in place. This way, the raw edges will be sewn into the seam. Repeat on all the corners. Starting at the bottom corner of the band, edge stitch all around, back tacking at the start and finish. Make sure the ends of your rickrack are caught inside the seam. Next, set to the longest stitch length and your top thread tension to 0. Then pull out your top and bobbin thread so you have about 4 or 5 inches. On the wrong side of the towel, we'll be stitching to the left and also to the right of this center line, and we'll just use the side of the presser foot as a guide. There's no need to back tack, and I'm just using a contrast thread so you can see what I'm doing. Just stitch beside the line, and when you get to the other end, pivot around and stitch down the other side. At the end of the stitch line, leave a long tail before trimming your thread. Open up the top band and then place the right side of the towel on top. Match the center line of the towel without the loose threads with the center crease of the top band and pin it in place. On the other side, you can see that the stitches of the top thread are nice and loose because we had the tension on 0. Separate the 2 top threads from the bobbin threads and then pull on the 2 bobbin threads together to gather up the fabric. This should be pretty easy with the loose stitches. Gather up until it's about the same width as the band and then pin those edges in place. Keep the hems on either side flat, but gather up some more and adjust all the gathered fabric until everything looks nice and even. Then place a couple more pins through that center line. Sewing 2 stitch lines for gathering gives you a lot more control of the fabric. If you like the look of this towel, you may want to have a look at my tutorial for a matching patchwork bowl cozy. Readjust your tension and the stitch length. Stitch right down that center line, back tacking well at the start and finish, making sure that you're catching the edges of both the towel and the top band. To give this towel a bit more strength, pivot around and stitch right on top of the previous stitch line and back tack to finish. Carefully cut a gathering stitch on either side of the center stitch line, and then on the other side, cut the bobbin thread on either side. Now gently pull out all those threads. If you have any light marks from the gathering, just give it a little bit of steam to remove them. To hang this towel, loop the band from the back over your handle, cross with the front of the band, and tie a half knot. Pretty up the ends, and it really does stay in place. To remove, just pull on the center. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to check out my new video up next. Hi everyone, Angela here. Print out the pattern at 100% letter size and check with the 1-inch square. Cut out all the pattern pieces and join the long band pieces together. You can find the link for this pattern and the tools I use down in the description. I've pre-washed my towels and my fabric. Line up the pattern piece for the band with one side of the towel, then fold back the other end so that it's an inch wider. This way the band will be half an inch wider on each side. You'll need one of piece B cut out of batting. I'm using plain cotton batting for the first set. You can use a fat quarter or a fat flat to cut out this pattern. The pattern pieces can be cut along the crosswise or lengthwise grain. Because this fabric has a directional pattern and I want it running across the towel this way, I'll cut the band along the crosswise grain. The top piece will be folded over a bar like this, so I want the pattern of the fabric to be running lengthwise. You'll need 2 fabric pieces, so fold the fabric with right sides together and cut it out all at once. Turn the 2 pieces sideways and center the batting on top. Clip in the center, then turn the side edges over the batting half an inch and clip in place. Repeat on the other side and add more clips if you need to. With the band wrong side up, mark a line 1 inch up from both of the long edges. I'm using a heat erasable pen. Fold up the edges to the line and press across on both sides. Then fold in the sides of the band half an inch and press. With right side up, decide how far up you'd like to place the band from the edge of the towel. I'm marking 3 inches up from the edge. Place the band on the marks, match the side edges, and clip in place. Along both sides, put in a few pins perpendicular to the edges. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, click the link for Echidna Sewing and Juki Junkies for North America. Starting at the top right corner, we'll edge stitch the band all around. Stitch about 1/16 of an inch from the edge, back tacking at the start and finish. At the corners, have your needle down, pivot, and then push in the seam allowances so that they're not sticking out. Sew both sides of the top piece using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backtacking at the start and finish. Remove the clips, separate the fabric at the ends, pull apart at the seams, flip over, and crease along the folds. Turn right side out and match the folded edges. Close each side with an edge stitch, backtacking at the start and finish. For the second set, I'm using a fusible batting with the glue dots on one side. This one is the Valiseline H640. Again, cut 1 of piece B. The fabric I'm using for this set doesn't have a directional print, so I'm going to cut along the crosswise grain. I'm also placing the center of the band pattern along the fold of the fabric to cut out one piece. Have one of the top pieces wrong side up, then center the batting on top with the glue side down. Carefully flip over and press together. From each corner, mark 1.5 inches in from each side. The rickrack I'm using is 1/2 inch wide, but you can use narrower or wider. To add the rickrack to the band, place it on top with the end just slightly past the edge of the fabric and the curves lined up with the side. To sew down the center of the rickrack, carefully stitch just below the bottom of the curves. Sew on both sides of the band, and there's no need to backtack. When you get to the end, just cut the rickrack slightly longer than the band. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on all notifications, and leave a comment below. As always, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. On each side, turn the edge of the band under along the stitch line and press across. Then turn over, fold the ends in 1/2 inch and press. Position the band on the towel where you'd like it. Then fold each corner of the seam allowance on a 45-degree angle and clip in place. Put in a few pins again and edge stitch all around. The corners should be neat and tidy without any raw edges showing. For the top piece, we're only adding the rickrack between the marks. Place the end of the rickrack just past the mark and then pull it over the edge of the fabric. Stitch down the center of the rickrack, keeping the curves lined up with the edge. At the other mark, angle the rickrack to the side, stitch across, cut, and then repeat on the other side. With right sides together, place this piece with the rickrack on top of the other piece, matching all the edges. Fold over the ends and clip together just like we did with the other one. I'm stitching the sides again with a 1/4 inch seam allowance and also making sure I'm stitching right on top of the previous stitching. You'll have to adjust the seam allowance if your rickrack is a different size. Once done, turn it right side out and stitch the ends closed. Pull the rickrack at the seams and press. On the first top piece, I'm adjusting the side seams so that they're right in the middle. Fold in half and mark the center at each end. Draw a line down the center and then lines 1 inch from it on either side. For the other top piece, I'm going to mark quilt lines from corner to corner. Instead of using a pen, you can also use a tool called a Hera marker. It has a sharp, rounded edge, so when you press down on the fabric, it'll leave a crease for you to follow. If you want, increase the stitch length a bit. Stitch along all the quilt lines, backtacking at the start and finish. Stitch all in the same direction so there's no twisting of the fabric. For this crisscross one, you can actually sew the ends closed at the same time. To attach the rings, fold the ends over about 1 inch or so until there's about 3/8 of an inch of fabric sitting flat below it. Match the center lines and then stitch around from edge to edge, back tacking at the start and finish. Keep the side of the presser foot against the ring while sewing around. You can see with this one, the rick-rack stops just over the ring, so there's no wastage and less bulk on the back. This project is quick and easy, and it's a great way to use up those smaller pieces of fabric and scraps. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to check out my video up next. Hi everyone, Angela here. To make this little easy gift idea, print out my pattern at 100% letter size, check the 1-inch square and cut out. On each side, cut out the small notches. I'm using quilting cotton for this towel holder. You can cut the pattern as a whole piece or fold it and the fabric in half. Place the pattern on the fabric without using any of the selvage edge. Match the folded edges and cut it out this way. Then cut the small notches along the fold on each side. To give this band a nice puffy look, I'm using fusible batting with the glue dots on one side. Fold the sides of the pattern in 3/8 of an inch and cut one out of the fusible batting. Cut 2.5 inches of 1¼ inch wide elastic. To see how I make a matching tassel out of embroidery floss, you can watch my tutorial here. To add a few beads to the top of the tassel, thread a needle without knotting it and use the thread to pull the loop of the tassel through the beads. With the glue side of the batting up, place the wrong side of the fabric on top and press together. I'm using a Brother NV50S sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are in the description below. Make sure to use coupon code NOTCHES NV50S for the special offer. Center the loop of the tassel along one of the points. Tack and place about 1/4 inch up from the point, leaving about 1/4 inch from the bead. Stitch back and forth a few times so that it's nice and secure. Now fold the fabric in half with right sides together and just make sure the tassel is out of the way. When we stitch this seam, we want to pivot right in the center of this loop. Clip in place, and then on one end, sandwich the elastic right into that center notch. With a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, start by back tacking, stitch, stop 1/4 inch from the edge, pivot, and now stitch the seam with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Pivot at the point, and then continue stitching, and when you get close to the end, fold up both edges 3/8 of an inch, and then back tack to finish. Trim all the corners on an angle, and trim the points without cutting the loop. Push in the closed end to turn it right side out, and then use a knitting needle or a point turner to help you push it all through. Carefully pull out the tassel and then push out the corner below the elastic. Pull out that center point by tugging on the tassel and then fold the side seams in. Loop the elastic around and then insert 1/2 inch into the opening. Make sure the edge of the elastic is pushed right up into the fold. Clip in place if you need to, and then edge stitch through all the layers, back tacking at the start and finish. With the towel folded in thirds hung over the rail, slip your hand through the band and just pull it up over the towel. Not only is it pretty, but it'll help keep the towel neatly in place when it's being used. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to check out my video up next. Hi everyone, Angela here. For this tea towel, I've already washed it and put it through the dryer. It shrunk down to about 17 inches wide by 26 inches long. You can use any size tea towel you'd like. Fold the width in half with wrong sides together. Fold in half the other way and mark the center on the fold. From that center, measure and mark 4 inches on either side. From those marks, measure up 3 inches and draw a line across. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, click the link for Echidna Sewing and Juki Junkies for North America. Stitch along that line between the two marks, backtacking at the start and finish. Open up to the right side and then center and flatten down the channel. Flip over to the back, fold the outer edges to the center, and flip over again. You can really fold your towel into any width that you like, but I like to have about an inch on each side from those center folds. Mark lines straight across at those 3 marks, then pin through all the layers on that center section. Flip over to the back to check that everything's nice and flat and the center edges aren't overlapped. Next, we'll stitch on the 3 lines to hold everything in place. For each line, back tack at the start and finish, and go slowly over the folds so that everything stays nice and straight. Also, try not to stretch the fabric when you're sewing across. For the trim, use 1/2 inch wide double fold bias tape. You can find my tutorial on how to make your own bias tape here. Try to use a length that doesn't have any joins in it. Start by cutting one end straight across and place that end on that center line. Match the edge of the tape with the side of the towel and clip in place. Just past the next line, fold the bias tape back onto itself. Hold down the corner of that fold, flip the tape over on a 45-degree angle, creating a mitered corner, and clip in place. To hide the stitch line, it should be just underneath the center of the tape. Pin that in place, then fold and clip the next corner. Clip the bias tape to the side, then cut the end right at that center line. Double check that the inner edges of the bias tape match right at the corners. Next, we'll be edge stitching the outer edge and the inner edge of the binding. Starting with a back tack, stitch 1/16 of an inch from the edge, making sure you're stitching through all the layers. Use a tool such as this awl or a point turner to help you hold everything in place. At the corners, stop just before the edge of the tape, have your needle down, lift your presser foot, and pivot. Continue all around and then turn and sew the inside edge. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on all notifications, and leave a comment below. As always, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Mark the center of the top of the towel. Cut the end straight on another length of binding. Place that end 1/2 inch past the side and then mark the center. From that mark, measure across 4 3/4 inches and put a pin there. Fold right at the pin and then cut so that it's equal with the end. From the fold, measure 2 inches and mark. Then turn over to the other side and mirror those 2 marks. It should measure 4 inches between the center marks and then 2.5 inches on each side. Next, we need to join the folded edges just between the outer marks. Edge stitch together and back tack at each mark. With the unstitched edge on the bottom, match the first mark with the center of the towel and center the tape on top of that stitch line. We want to cover the stitch line and the top edges of the tape. Fold the end over and clip in place. Pin the center and then repeat on the other side. Check that both sides of the trim measure the same and then pin across the top. Edge stitch both sides of the binding, starting from the side and stopping just before that center mark. There should be a little gap in the center where the binding isn't sewn. Place the second mark onto the center of the towel, stitch across the binding, and then repeat on the other side. If you're just hanging your tea towel on a hook, you're pretty much done. But if you're hanging it over a bar, you'll also need to add a little cam snap just above the binding to keep it from falling off. I also have another tutorial if you want to learn how I cover my cam snaps with fabric. Mark the placement on the front and back. When you're installing the snaps, make sure the back edges are open. You can get a bit more creative and use narrow lace instead of the binding, and you could also embroider something onto the front. Make sure to have a look at some of my other hanging tea towel designs. Thanks again for watching, take care, and happy sewing! Hi everyone, Angela here. A couple of years ago I made a tutorial on how to make small fabric butterflies, which was the inspiration for this new design. Print out the pattern at 100% letter size and check with the 1-inch square. Links for this pattern and the tools I use can be found down in the description below. Carefully cut out all the pattern pieces. Join pieces A and B together and cut out the small notch at the center top. Then join pieces C, D, and E together. I'm using 2 different pieces of 100% quilting cotton for this project. Cut 2 of the main body piece without including any of the selvages. Then cut 1 piece for the loop. To give the butterfly some body, you'll need medium weight non-woven fusible interfacing with the glue on one side. Cut 2 pieces for the main body. With the fabric wrong side up, place the interfacing on top with glue side down and press together. Repeat for the other piece. On the piece that you're using as the main fabric, cut the center notch on one edge. You'll also need some 1/4-inch elastic for the loop. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. Make sure to use the code NOTCHESJUKI for the special offer. To make the loop, fold it in half lengthwise with right sides together and carefully matching the edges. Stitch with a 1/4-inch seam allowance, back tacking at the start and finish. If you need, use a little magnetic seam guide to help you sew straight. Attach a small safety pin to one end, push it inside, and then slowly turn the loop right side out. Flatten it and adjust the seam so that it's all on one side. Remove the safety pin and just neaten out the end. Attach safety pins close to both ends of the elastic. Then thread it through until there's just a little bit of elastic left at the end. Stitch close to the edge of the fabric to hold in place. Thread through the rest of the elastic and stitch the other end. Remove the safety pins and stretch it out evenly, making sure nothing's twisted. On the main fabric piece, locate the notch on the edge. Fold the loop in half without any twisting, and then place it to the left of the notch, matching the fabric ends. Carefully hold the ends on top of each other and stitch close to the edge of the fabric to hold in place. With right sides together, place the other piece of fabric on top, matching the edges. Clip together, clip where the loop is, and then place another clip about 1 inch from the loop. Then clip the rest of the sides together. From the clip beside the loop, leave a space about 2 inches or 3 fingers wide. Starting here, use a 1/4-inch seam allowance to stitch all around, back tack at the start and finish, and pivot at the corners. Carefully stitch over the loop and finish by back tacking about an inch past it. Trim all the corners on an angle, being careful not to cut any of the stitching. Separate the seams and press flat all around. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on all notifications, and leave a comment below. Flip over, turn up the other side of the seams, and press them all down. This step is optional, but it does make it a lot easier to center the seams later on. Go through the opening to turn right side out, and then use a point turner or knitting needle to carefully poke out all the corners. Next, adjust the seams by pinching and rolling so that they're right in the center, and press all around. Also adjust and match the folds of the opening. With the main fabric facing you, pull out the loop to find the center, hold it there, and then turn it towards you once and put the edges together at the fabric edge. You should have 2 equal loops without any twisting. Use a clip to hold it in place and clip the opening together as well. Starting just before the loop, edge stitch all around, back tacking at the start and finish. Go slowly over the loop, keeping those edges together right in the center. Fold in half, matching the corners and side edges, and with the loop at the bottom, crease that center fold. Carefully fold in half again, matching all the edges at the bottom, and crease the top fold. Lift the top half and then push down the center of that edge, creating a triangle. Keep adjusting the triangle until the contrasting fabric on the side is nice and even. Carefully turn over, open up the other half, creating another triangle. Adjust as needed. The center of the loop should be right at the center where the 2 folds meet. Clip the edges together and make sure the contrasting fabric is nice and even. Open up the loop and clip the sides together. The back and front should look the same. Sew across the loops through all the layers on top of the original edge stitching, back tacking at the start and finish. Next 1/4 inch from the fabric edge, we'll stitch across the loops again inside the edges. The stitching shouldn't go beyond the edges. On the front, we're going to be folding from the end of this top line of stitching to about 3/4 inch down from this side corner, and the same on the other side. Place your fingers in between the fabric at the sides, pinch and fold along that line, bringing the front of that fabric down. The corner of that fold should just stick out a little bit at the side. Clip it in place and repeat on the other side. Check that everything is centered at the top and the butterfly looks nice and symmetrical. About an inch down from that inner fold, make a mark in the center of that bottom portion and repeat on the other side. On both sides, tack in place 1 stitch back and forth a few times to hold all the layers together. Place the butterfly face down and then fold the width of a tea towel into thirds. Pull the towel through the bottom loop halfway and fold over. Neaten it up on the elastic and it's ready to be hung on any hook or handle. Nice thick bathroom hand towels can also be used. To hang on a bar, loop it over from behind, pull the butterfly through, and then add the towel. Make sure to check out my channel for more DIY projects and clothing alteration tutorials. Thanks again for watching. Take care and happy sewing. Hi everyone, Angela here. I'm using 1 bath towel to cut out 2 round hand towels. Cut away labels and tags. Don't include any of the finished edges on the towels. Start by cutting the length of the towel in half and then remove one of the layers. Fold the piece in half and then in half again without including the finished edges. Make a mark on the center of the fabric. From the center, measure across to the raw edge. Mine is 13 inches or 33 centimeters. Use your measurement to mark from the center all around to the other edge. Just make your marks about 1.5 inches or 2 inches apart. Cut around through all the layers and then use this as a template to cut out the second piece. If you don't want to use a towel, you can also make them out of fabrics such as cotton or linen. Here I'm using 3/4 yard or 0.8 meters of cotton waffle weave. Don't include the selvage in your towels, and because the fabric is thinner, this time you can fold and cut all the layers together, and then mark the centers of both pieces. To make the bias binding, cut away any selvage from a fat quarter or a fat flat. You can also use ready-made double fold bias binding. Trim any edges that need squaring up. On your fabric, find the crosswise grain that has a little bit of stretch and the lengthwise grain that has no stretch. Cut a 2-inch or 5 centimeter wide strip along the lengthwise grain. From that strip, cut 2 7-inch or 18 centimeter pieces for the loops. Lift the bottom corner and match the left edge to the top edge and crease along the fold. This 45-degree angle is the bias of the fabric. You can also find the bias by placing the 45-degree line along the bottom edge of the fabric, and the long edge of the ruler will be the bias. Cut the fabric along that crease. We'll be cutting strips along the bias. Place the two bias edges together and then turn the fabric so that edge is vertical. Then carefully fold in half and half again, keeping those edges all lined up. Carefully cut 2-inch or 5 centimeter strips through all the layers. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Remove the small corner pieces and open up the rest of the strips. Depending on the size of your towels, there should be enough binding for 2. Most of the ends will have 45-degree angles on them already. Any that don't, just lay it down, place another on top, and then cut at the same angle. To join the pieces, you want to line up the angles at the ends like this. Flip one piece over so that right sides are together. I'm just going to draw the 1/4 inch or 6 millimeter seam allowance to show how the edges should be put together. You don't want the corners to match, instead slide it over so that the edges match at the ends of the seam allowance. Pin or clip in place. Put the edges together in the same way when the angles are in the opposite direction. You can just join them at the machine or join all the pieces together first. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, click the link for Echidna Sewing and Juki Junkies for North America. Start by sewing a few stitches first, and then push the corner right into the needle. Stitch together using a 1/4 inch or 6 millimeter seam allowance. There's no need to back tack, just keep stitching about 1 inch past the end of the seam. It's important to start and finish your stitching exactly where the edges meet. By doing that, the edges of the binding will be nice and straight. When it's not sewn from corner to corner, the sides of the binding won't be aligned. It's okay if it's off just a tiny bit, but you don't want it to look like this. Once all the seams are joined together, separate them with clippers, or I just use the thread cutter on the side of my machine. Next, separate the seams and press them all flat. Trim away all the corners, even with the edge. To help fold the sides, I'm using a 1-inch or 25 millimeter wide bias tape maker. The tape goes in this wider end, gets folded along the sides, and then comes out 1/2 inch wide. With the tape wrong side up, angle the end a bit and thread it through. If you have any problems, just use a pin or an awl to push the fabric through. Neaten up the sides and press a bit at a time. The folded sides should be even with just a bit of space in between. If it helps, place a pin on the end to keep the tape in place while you press. When going over the seams, just make sure they're open and folded properly. I'm going to be showing you two different methods of attaching the bias binding without joining the ends. For the first method, fold the tape in half, matching the folded edges, and press. Turn off the steam so you don't burn yourself. I'll use the toweling for the first method. Open up the binding and then fold down the angled end about 3/8 of an inch or a centimeter and crease. With right sides together, place it down on the towel, matching the edges. Make sure you don't see the edge of the towel like this. It needs to be underneath the binding, otherwise you'll need to trim the towel later. Line up the crease to the inside edge of the foot and stitch just to the right of the crease. There's no need to back tack. Stretch the bias tape just a little as you match the curved edge. Just slowly work with a couple of inches at a time. Again, your stitching should be just beside that crease line. If you have one, you can use a magnetic seam guide. Just place it down on a bit of an angle. When you get close to the end, overlap the bias tape until it's about 1/2 inch past that corner, and then cut. Continue stitching just past the end of the bias tape, trim that corner from the edge, and then flip the towel over to the other side. Carefully fold over both layers together so that you have a nice smooth edge. Fold the binding around the towel. Make sure that folded edge is placed right along the stitch line and clip in place. If you need to, clip all around. Starting just before the join, have the folded edge of the tape in line with the inside edge of your presser foot and edge stitch all around, back tacking at the start and finish. The edge stitching should look pretty much the same on both sides. For the second method, we want the back of the bias binding to be a bit wider, so instead of matching the folded edges, offset it by about 1/16 of an inch or 1.5 millimeters. I'm using the thinner fabric for the second method. With the wider side underneath, cut the end of the binding straight across and open up. Place the edge of the fabric right in the center of the binding and fold it over. Pull the end out just a little bit and start edge stitching. Continue lining up the edge of the fabric with the inner edge of the binding, leaving that little space in the center so that it folds over easily. Again, stretch the binding a little bit as you go around the fabric. Because the back is wider, you'll be sure to catch the underside of the binding. When you're close to the end, trim away the start of the binding in line with the towel. Measure down about 1 inch from that cut and then cut your binding. Fold the end over and just pinch in the center a bit. Continue edge stitching to the end, making sure to cover the edges of the binding underneath and to catch the back of the binding, then back tack to finish. For a closed loop, have the piece wrong side up and then press the center and the sides in as you did with the bias. Open up, match the short ends with right sides together and clip in place. Stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back tacking at the start and finish. Press the seam open and then fold all together again. Starting at the seam, edge stitch both sides of the loop, back tacking at the start and finish. With this join at the back, slide in the towel and then place the seam of the loop on that center mark. Next, we'll stitch on either side of that seam. Start and finish your stitching in the middle of the loop, going back and forth, catching the edges. Trim the threads, then pull on the loop and stitch all the layers together about 1/4 inch from the towel. I just think this extra step gives the loop a much nicer finish. For an open loop, press the center and sides, and then fold and press the ends in about 1/4 inch. Fold and press in half, matching the edges, and clip in place if you need to. From this end, measure across 2 inches or 5 centimeters and make a mark on the open end. Starting from this mark, edge stitch all around, pivoting at the corners and backtacking at the start and finish. When you're pivoting at the corners, make sure to push in the raw edges of the ends. At this mark, turn over the loop and draw a line across. With the join on the right-hand side, slide in the towel and then place the line of the loop on top of that center mark. Then stitch on securely, finishing in the center of the loop. To add cam snaps, put the ends together and then take a cap and press it to mark the center. Make a hole through both layers, and I'm adding a cap and stud to the shorter end and a cap and socket to the longer end. The towel with the closed loop will hang over a hook this way, so you could add something decorative or embroider something on the front here, and the towel with the open loop will hang over a bar this way, and this will be the front here. With all this area, you're sure to find a dry spot to wipe your hands. Thanks to Danielle for reminding me that they have round towels in France. Thanks again for watching, take care, and see you in the next video. Hi everyone, Angela here. This is an updated pattern of the original design that I created a few years ago. Print out the pattern at 100% letter size and check with the 1-inch square. You can find the link for this pattern and the full tutorial down in the description below. The tea towels that I like to use tend to shrink a bit, so I have washed, dried, and pressed it first. Remove any hanging loops from the tea towel, but you can leave the label on. With wrong sides together, fold the length of the towel in half. Cut down the middle into 2 pieces and put one aside. Use the template that's closest to the width of your towel. Center the notched edge along the cut edge and mark the notches on the towel. Use the other template for a narrower towel as the notches are different. Place it onto an ironing board or a pressing mat. From the center notch, go across to the next one, then pinch and fold straight across to the hem and match it to the center notch. Fold in the sides right at the outer notches straight down. Now, depending on how wide your towel is, your edges may overlap like this or they may not. It really doesn't matter as long as there's some fabric folded over to the back. Clip across the top and flip over. Then give the towel a press so that the pleats and the sides are nice and sharp. For a narrower towel, fold at the next notches and match it to the center ones. Fold the sides in at the outer notches, clip the top, flip over, and press. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, click the link for Echidna Sewing and Juki Junkies for North America. Stitch across the top 1/4 inch from the edge to hold the pleats in place. I'm using quilting cotton for the topper that I've washed, dried, and pressed. This busy all-over print does have a direction to it. The notches indicate the top of directional fabric. This will help us cut the fabric the right way. Cut 1 piece for the topper and don't use any of the selvage. For the band, I do want to fussy cut the fabric. Cut 1 out for the band. For a bit more structure, I'm using lightweight, non-woven, fusible interfacing. Cut 1 for each piece. The interfacing is optional. With the glue side up, place the wrong side of the topper piece on top, matching all the edges, and press together. With the fabric facing the right way, place the pattern back on top. Cut the small notches on each side and on the top. Again, with the glue side up, place the wrong side of the band piece on top and press together. Flip over with wrong side up and press in half. Open up, fold both outer edges to the center, leaving a small gap in the middle, and press. Fold in half again, matching the edges, and press. Here is the front of the band. If you wanted to embroider something, this is where you would do it. Clip the edges together and then sew a 1/4 inch top stitch along each side. And with the 2 edges at the bottom of the band, place the side of it between the 2 notches and clip in place. The band is a little bit wider. Clip this other side in place between the 2 notches and just push down the extra fabric out of the way. Stitch both sides close to the edge to keep the band in place. At the bottom of the band is where we're going to fold the topper in half, nice and tight, matching all the edges. With a 1/2 inch seam allowance, start with the back tack and then stitch about 1/2 inch past the notch and the edge of the band and back tack to finish. Flip over and repeat on the other side. Open up the topper with the notched edge on the right-hand side. Center the towel on top with the right side facing up. Clip the center. Roll up the towel tightly as small as possible, just past the stitch sides. Bring up the other side of the topper, matching all the edges, and then clip all together. With a 1/2 inch seam allowance, stitch across. There's no need to back tack. Fold both sides tightly over the edge of the towel and then stitch right over the previous stitching about 1 inch. Skip over and repeat on the other side. Go in from one side and pull the towel out through the opening. Pull the seam apart on each side to get a nice smooth edge. Continue turning the topper right side out and pull to separate the topper and band for a nice smooth edge across the top. Making sure your towel is facing right side up, turn in those side seams, making sure that they're nice and straight. Match the folds and clip together. Then turn the towel around and repeat on the other side. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on all notifications, and leave a comment below. As always, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Flip the band over so that it's also on the front, and then just finger press along the top edge. We'll be starting the top stitching at the center of this top edge. First, we just need to move the band out of the way. Starting with the back tack, top stitch 1/4 inch from the edge and stop just before the side. Pivot and now edge stitch until you're 1/4 inch from the bottom edge of the topper. Stitching closer to the edge on the sides will close them nicely. When you're 1/4 inch from the edge, pivot and top stitch across this edge. When you're close to the side, pivot and edge stitch up this other side. Keeping the band out of the way, when you're 1/4 inch from the top, pivot, top stitch across, and finish with a back tack at the center. The back tacking is hidden behind the band. The sides are closed really nicely, and both corners are as neat as you can get them. To hang the towel, have the front facing you and the band on the back. Fold the top over your bar, then place the bottom of the towel through the loop and pull down until the band just covers the seam. To easily remove, grab the band and pull down. Thanks again for watching. Take care and happy sewing! Hi everyone, Angela here. You may have seen some of my original hanging tea towel designs from a couple of years ago. They have front bands and can only be hung on horizontal bars. With my new design, you can hang them just about anywhere. Again, no buttons or buttonholes, Velcro or ribbons to tie. Print my pattern at 100% letter size and check with the 1-inch square. You can find the link for this in the description below. Carefully cut out all the pieces and cut out the little notches on pieces A and C. There's patterns for both straight and rounded top corners. Join pieces E to F, G to H, and I to J with tape. I'm using 100% quilting cotton for the tops. Cut 2 of piece A and then cut the 3 notches. Next, cut 1 of the loop piece. Repeat these steps to make a rounded top. To give the tops a puffy look, I'm using fusible batting with the glue dots on one side. Cut 2 of piece B for the straight corners and 2 of piece D for the rounded corners. With the fabric wrong side up, place the batting with glue side down, matching the top and side edges. There should be 5/8 of an inch of fabric showing at the bottom. Press together, and on just one of the pieces, turn the bottom edge up along the side notches and press along the fold. Do the same for the rounded tops. Trim away any batting that's sticking out from the fabric edges. I'm using the Juki TL-2010Q sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are down in the description below. Make sure to use the code NOTCHESJUKI for the special offer. Fold the loop piece in half lengthwise with right sides together. Stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back tacking at the start and finish. Attach a safety pin to one end to turn the loop right side out. Another way to make this loop is to sew along the edge, but instead of back tacking at the end, pivot at the corner and stitch across. Use a tube turner to turn it right side out. It's basically a skinny tube with a longer, skinnier stick. Feed the fabric onto the tube and then use the blunt end of the stick to push the closed end and the fabric through the tube. This is much easier if you have any issues with your hands. Use the stick to push out the corners, remove it, and then cut away that closed end. Smooth out the loops so that the seam runs along one side. Cut the length of 1/4 inch elastic and then place safety pins on each end. You can thread the elastic through the loop this way, or you can use a bodkin. Put the end of the elastic between the tips and then push the slider down to hold it securely in place. Thread it through until there's just a tiny little bit of elastic left showing at the end. Stitch close to the edge of the fabric to hold it in place. Now finish threading through the loop and stitch the other end. Take the piece with the pressed edge and locate the center notch at the top. Form a loop with the elastic piece, placing the edges with the seams together at the notch. Make sure your loop isn't twisted. Stitch across close to the edge to hold the loop in place. Put the 2 pieces right sides together, matching the top and side edges, and then clip or pin in place. Starting from the bottom, use a 1/4 inch seam allowance to stitch all around, pivot around the corners, and back tack at the start and finish. Only stitch around to the other side, leaving the bottom edge open. Trim the threads and both corners, being careful not to cut any of the stitching. Go in and fold the seams together while pushing the corners right side out. Use a point turner or a knitting needle to carefully push out the corners. To sew the rounded one, again use 1/4 inch seam allowance and just go slowly around the top corners. Slowly follow the lines on the plate or angle the arm of a magnetic guide to help you stitch around those curves. Trim both curves and then turn right side out. Use a hair marker or a knitting needle to carefully push out the seams. You don't want to have any points on those curved corners. Without touching the bottom crease, you can press around the top and sides. For the tea towel, I'm using a lightweight waffle weave that I've pressed flat. Do not use thick tea towels for this pattern. I'm keeping the label on but removing this corner loop. Fold the length of the towel in half and press across the fold. Fold in half the other way and just press with your fingers to find the center. This towel is 20 inches wide, so I'm using the wider template for the pleat markings. Place the center of the template just under the center of the towel. I'm using a vanishing ink pen to make the marks. You can also use chalk or pins. Mark the center and then the 2 marks on either side. Rotate the towel so the marks are on the side. From the center mark, go down to this first mark, lift and pinch, folding straight across, match that mark to the center again, and then press down, forming a pleat. Now bring this mark to the center, repeating those steps, forming a pleat. Those 2 folds should be touching at the center. Now at both the outer marks, fold the sides of the towel in towards the center. Now measure and check that the top measures exactly 6 inches from edge to edge. Clip the pleats in place and flip over to the front. It should measure 4 inches between the front folds and 1 inch on either side. Adjust if you need to and add a couple more clips to hold in place. If your towels are narrower, use the shorter template. Align the centers, but this time mark on either side of it and then add the other marks. We'll be leaving a gap between these 2 marks. Fold at the next marks and match it to those center ones. There should be a 1 inch gap between the folds. Fold the sides in at the outer marks and clip in place. Turn over and again check that it measures 6 inches across, 4 in the center, and 1 inch on each side. Stitch across the top 3/8 of an inch from the edge to hold in place. Turn over with the back facing up. Take the topper and place the right side of the bottom edge without the fold on top of the towel. Match the edges going across. At the sides, open it up, and then fold the seam allowances in towards the towel and carefully match the side of the towel with the side seam. Pin or clip to hold in place, and then repeat on the other side. Stretch out all the fabric nice and flat in between and clip in place. Make sure there aren't any unwanted pleats or tucks. Start your stitching just on the inside of the side seam. Stitch 5/8 of an inch from the edge just underneath the batting. Start with the back tack, stitch across, and then finish with the back tack at the other side seam. Again, make sure the seam allowances are all turned in towards the center. Push the corners in, and at the sides, check that the side seams are all facing in the same direction. Then wrap the folded bottom edge of the front around the side of the towel. Really wrap it around tightly and have that folded edge just covering that stitch line. Pin close to the edge and repeat on the other side. Adjust the front, really stretch out the fabric in the center, make sure that folded edge is covering the stitching, and pin across. To close the bottom edge, stitch 1/8 of an inch from the fabric edge, back tacking at the start and finish. Use a tool to help you keep the fabric flat as you pull out the pins. If you want, you can also edge stitch all around. The rounded top is attached to the towel exactly the same way. To hang on a bar, place the loop over it and pull the towel through. To remove, just stretch out the elastic and pull down. You can simply hang it on a hook or doorknob, but if you have a handle top like this, wrap around the front, pull it through, and then loop it around the top. To hang from the bottom, place the back of the loop behind it and pull the towel through. I hope you give this a try. Make sure to check out some of my other designs. Thanks again for watching. Take care and happy sewing. This is a variation of my modern hanging tea towel design. My original design has a pleated front with the sides folded to the back. If you have a tea towel that's a bit thicker or narrower or has a design on the front that you don't want to lose, you may not want to pleat it. Cut the towel in half like you would for the original so that you can make 2 hanging tea towels, and just fold the sides to the back with the pattern centered in the front. Check that it measures the right width and clip the layers together. You can find the link for my original towel pattern below this video and down in the description. The next variation is for the front band. I want to add some trim, so from this scrap piece of fabric, I'm cutting 2 1-inch wide bias strips. With wrong sides together, fold in half, matching the edges, and press. Instead of using 1 large piece for the band as shown in the pattern, we'll use 2 smaller pieces and also add interfacing. With the glue side up, place the wrong side of the fabric on top and press together. You can make the band as wide or as narrow as you like. With right sides together, place one of the bias strips on top of one of the band pieces. Match all the raw edges and stitch together close to the edge, then repeat on the other side. There's no need to backstitch. Trim the extra binding on both ends. Place on top of the other piece, matching all the edges with right sides together. Stitch both sides with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitching at each end. Carefully turn right side out and then press the seams flat on both sides. With these 2 slight variations, you can continue making the towel following the original instructions. These towels are great as gifts, and the design is simple to make without any need for buttons, snaps, Velcro, or ribbon. To hang, face the front towards you with the band at the back. Fold the top over your bar, slip the bottom of the towel through the loop, and pull down until the band covers the seam. To remove, just grab the band and pull down. Tap the product links below to get the original PDF pattern with written instructions. Thanks again for watching. Take care and happy sewing. Hi everyone, Angela here. Print out the pattern at 100% letter size and check the 1-inch square on each page. Carefully cut out each piece and all the notches where indicated. I'm using quilting cotton for this project that I've washed and pressed. Do not use any of the selvage edges when cutting out your pattern pieces. With the grain lines parallel to the selvage edges, cut out all the required pattern pieces and clip the notches. For the white contrast, I'm using nursery fleece for the soft furry texture. You can also use cotton or flannel. We also need some lightweight, non-woven fusible interfacing with the glue dots on one side. You'll need interfacing for the back piece. On this back pattern piece, you'll see 4 marks for the button placements. With the glue side down, place the interfacing on top of the pattern and trace the marks. Now with the glue side up, place the wrong side of the back piece on top and press together. For the fasteners, I'm using a pair of large magnetic handbag buttons. Pull them apart and then separate the flat base with the holes from each piece. Center the base on each mark and then mark out the side slits. Then use a utility knife or scissors to cut out those small slits. For Santa's belt, I'm using 3/4 inch or 2 centimeter wide cotton twill tape. If you don't have twill tape, just cut the belt pattern out of black fabric. Fold lengthwise in half with wrong sides together and crease down the center. Open up and then fold the outer edges to that center crease and press. Next, take a 3/4 inch or 2 centimeter vest buckle or slider and center it onto the tape. Center this now on top of the piece with the 2 notches on each side. Use wax chalk to mark a line close to each side of the buckle. Pin in place down the center of the belt. Next will be edge stitching around each side of the belt, pivoting at the chalk marks. I'm using a Brother NV50S sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are in the description below. Make sure to use coupon code NOTCHES NV50S for the special offer. There's no need to back tack, just slide the buckle out of your way so that you can pivot around the chalk line and then repeat for the other side. With right sides together, match the edges of the white strips to the red at the top and bottom and clip in place. Stitch down both sides with a 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance, back tacking at the start and finish. Open up, match the top front piece to the top white band with right sides together. Again, stitch with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, back tacking at the start and finish. Flip over to the wrong side and press the bottom seam toward the band and the center seams to the middle. On the right side, iron away the chalk marks. With right sides together, place the interface back piece on top, match the notches to the center seam, and clip both sides in place. Again, with right sides together, match the inner panels. On one seam, we're going to leave about a 3-inch opening. Stitch all the seams, back tacking at the start and finish, and double check that the seams are facing in the right direction. Press the seams of the inner panels open, making sure not to press the sides of the fabric. Press all the seams of the top panels towards the back piece. Take one side of the magnetic sets and push through the slits from inside. Place the bases on top and then flatten the prongs to each side. Repeat with the other halves. Turn the inner panels right side out, match the seams, and slide into the outer panels. Clip all around and sew together. There's no need to back tack, just overlap the stitching about an inch to finish. Pull out the inner panel and then press the seam allowance towards it all around. Fold it in half, matching the edges at the top. Fold the 2 inner layers out of the way, match the edges of the outer layer, match the seams, and then clip together. Again, push those inner layers out of your way, stitch a few inches, pull those inner layers towards you, and then continue stitching a little bit at a time. This is called the burrito method. Keep checking that you're not catching the inner layers. Overlap your stitching to finish. Adjust the seam so that it faces the inner panels and press all around. Go through the opening and turn it right side out. Adjust the top and bottom seams so that they're right in the center. Turn it again so that the inner panel is on the outside. Press around both seams and then close the opening. Stitch close to the folded edges, back tacking at the start and finish. Next, we need to top stitch above the magnetic buttons, starting at the seam, back tacking, stitching across, and then back tacking at the other seam. Place your presser foot just beside the button and then position your needle to the right. Take note of where the edge of your fabric is or place a magnetic edge guide beside it. Stitch and then repeat on the other side. To make the elf topper, match notches right sides together, the white center with the green sides. Clip, stitch together, and then press the seam allowances towards the center. Turn over, and then clip the white bands at the top and bottom with right sides together. Stitch, and then add the front top to the white band. Press the seams as before, and this time I'm adding the magnetic buttons before attaching the back piece. Sew the rest of the topper just as before, and then use a vanishing ink pen to mark the 3 centers of the white bands. These craft bells are about 3/4 of an inch or 18 millimeters. Cut a long length of thread, fold in half, thread the fold through your needle so that you have 4 strands, and knot them together at the end. From inside, thread your needle through the first mark and pull through. Thread your needle through the shank of the bell, and then place your needle about 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters above the mark and pull through slowly, making sure not to twist the thread. Stitch through the center of the mark again, through the bell, and then through that top stitch again. Do this one more time, and then on the inside, sew a couple of knots by making a loop and then sewing through it. Repeat these steps for the other 2 bells. What's great about these toppers is that you can use any size tea towel with them and change them when you need to. With the bottom of the front here, flip the towel over to the wrong side. With the magnet side up, place the bottom of the topper towards the center of the towel. Fold the sides so that it's slightly narrower than the topper. Pull the towel through and adjust it to however long you want the front. For the larger towels, just make a couple of extra folds, and if you don't want to fold it, you can just gather the towel in. Slip the back of the towel behind the bar, and it easily clips into place with a pretty good hold. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to check out my video up next.